The story of Germany between 1919 and 1934 is one of the most dramatic political transformations of the modern era. A nation defeated in war, shaken by economic collapse, and deeply divided by ideology, would move from a fragile democracy to an authoritarian dictatorship within just 14 years. This episode examines the real historical forces behind that transformation. How did Germany, its democratic experiment, fail? Why did extremist movements gain momentum? And how did political miscalculations allow a radical party to take control of one of Europe's most advanced societies? This is the true story of a nation in crisis, and how those crises opened the door to a regime that would shape world history. Chapter 1. Aftermath of World War. 1918-1920. Germany emerged from World War I exhausted. The military defeat, combined with the economic and social consequences of the war, shattered public confidence. With the monarchy collapsing, the country attempted to rebuild itself as a republic, the Weimar Republic. From the beginning, however, the new political system faced enormous challenges. Millions of soldiers returned home to a struggling economy. Food shortages, inflation, and widespread unemployment fueled anger across society. Many believed the political order that replaced the empire lacked legitimacy. Some blamed democratic leaders for accepting the armistice. Others insisted Germany had been betrayed internally, a false claim that would later be exploited by extremist groups. Violence became a constant presence. Armed paramilitaries, left-wing uprisings, right-wing coups, and political assassinations defined the early years of the Republic. The government struggled to maintain control as rival factions fought for influence in the streets. In this unstable environment, political extremism began to thrive. Chapter 2. The early Nazi movement, 1919-1923. In the southern region of Bavaria, nationalist and paramilitary groups were particularly active. Among them emerged a small political party that would later transform Germany, the National Socialist German Workers' Party. At this early stage, the party was poorly organized and limited in reach, but it quickly understood the power of propaganda, mass rallies, and disciplined paramilitary units. It built a message around national revival, rejection of the Treaty of Versailles, and promises of restoring Germany's strength. Support remained small, but the party established itself as one of many radical groups challenging the fragile republic. Its growth was aided by public frustration, economic instability, and distrust toward democratic institutions. By 1923, Germany faced one of its most severe crises, hyperinflation. Chapter 3. Hyperinflation. The Beer Hall Putsch, 1923. The hyperinflation crisis of 1923 destroyed the savings of millions. Prices changed by the hour. Workers were paid in baskets of banknotes. Families watched their life savings evaporate within days. Amid this chaos, extremist groups believed the government had lost control. Some right-wing factions openly planned insurrection. In November 1923, an attempted coup took place in Munich, the Beer Hall Putsch. It began with a gathering of Bavarian leaders and ended with armed groups marching through the streets. The rebellion collapsed within a day. Police intervened. Several marchers were killed, and the leaders were arrested. The Nazi Party was banned. But the failed coup had an unexpected long-term consequence. It forced the movement to rethink its entire strategy. During the following months, the leadership concluded that future success would depend not on rebellion, but on gaining power through legal, political means. This strategic shift would reshape the party and set the stage for its later rise. Chapter 4. Rebuilding Legal Strategy, 1924-1928. After the ban was lifted, the Nazi Party began rebuilding itself from the ground up. Local branches were established throughout the country. Propaganda operations expanded significantly. Mass rallies, uniforms, music, and symbols created a sense of unity and purpose. The party developed a highly structured organization. It created women-esque groups, youth groups, paramilitary units, and regional leaders responsible for spreading the message. This system allowed the movement to operate nationwide with discipline and consistency. However, during the mid-1920s, Germany achieved a period of relative stability. International agreements helped the economy recover. Foreign investment increased, and inflation came under control. Unemployment dropped, and social conditions improved. In this more stable environment, extremist parties struggled to gain support. The Nazi Party remained a fringe movement. Its influence was limited, and many observers believed it had passed its moment. But German stability would prove temporary. Another crisis was coming, one far more devastating than anything before. Chapter 5. The Great Depression, the Nazi Surge, 1929-1932. The global financial collapse of 1929 hit Germany with extraordinary force. American loans, which supported much of Germany's economy, were suddenly withdrawn. Banks failed, businesses collapsed, and unemployment soared to record levels. Within months, millions lost their jobs. Families faced hunger and eviction. Political confidence evaporated. Amid this suffering, extremist parties gained a new audience. The Nazi Party offered clear messaging: national renewal, economic revival, and the promise of a strong government. Their propaganda adapted to each region and social group. Farmers were promised relief from debt. Workers were promised jobs and stability. Middle-class citizens were promised protection from communism. Mass rallies attracted enormous crowds. Marching columns of the SA displayed strength at a time when many felt powerless. By 1930, the Nazi Party had become a major force in the Reichstag. 2 years later, it became the largest party in Germany, though. Still, without a majority, Germany's political system could no longer govern effectively. No coalition could be formed that held stable support. This deadlock opened the door to backroom negotiations that would determine the nation's future. Chapter 6. The Appointment to Power, 1933. In late 1932 and early 1933, conservative leaders and industrialists debated how to restore stability. Many rejected the idea of new elections or political compromise. Some believed that bringing the Nazis into government would calm their supporters. Others argued they could be managed or controlled by experienced elites. President Paul von Hindenburg, an aging and influential figure, played a central role in these discussions. After weeks of negotiations, political leaders decided to form a coalition that included the Nazi Party, believing they could limit its influence. On January 30th, 1933, Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. This was not a takeover from the streets. It was a political decision made by elites who underestimated the ambitions of the movement they had just handed power. Within weeks, the new government began to reshape the political landscape. Chapter 7. The Reichstag Fire, the End of Civil Liberties, 1933. On February 27th, 1933, a fire erupted at the Reichstag building. The government immediately used the event to enact emergency measures. The Reichstag Fire Decree suspended key civil liberties: freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, protection against arrest, and privacy of communication. Police, supported by paramilitary units, arrested thousands of political opponents. Newspapers critical of the government were shut down. Opposition meetings were banned. Though the upcoming elections still took place, they unfolded in an atmosphere dominated by fear, propaganda, and intimidation. The Nazis gained seats, and with the support of Allied parties, they pushed for a decisive law, the Enabling Act. Passed on March 23, 1933, it transferred legislative power directly to the government. Germany's democratic system had effectively ended. Chapter 8. One-Party Rule State Transformation, 1933-1934. With parliamentary authority removed, the government began restructuring every aspect of society. Political parties were dissolved. Unions were abolished and replaced with centralized organizations. Regional governments were subordinated to the central authority. Propaganda campaigns expanded dramatically. Education, culture, media, and public events were coordinated to ensure ideological consistency. Paramilitary groups continued to grow, reinforcing social control. Opponents were imprisoned, pressured, or driven into exile. Critics within the civil service were removed. Judges, police chiefs, and local officials were replaced with loyal supporters. By mid-1934, the government had consolidated almost total control. The Weimar Republic had ceased to exist, not through sudden revolution, but through a systematic process of legal changes, political repression, and elimination of opposition. The transformation was complete. Germany had become a dictatorship. The rise of the Nazi regime was not inevitable. It was the product of economic collapse, political miscalculations, and the failure of democratic institutions to withstand crisis. The events of 1919 to 1934 reveal how vulnerable societies can be when faced with instability and division. Understanding this history is essential. It shows how democracies can erode from within, how extremist movements exploit fear, and how political decisions made in moments of uncertainty can have consequences that shape entire generations. This story does not rely on myth or exaggeration. It is a record of real events that changed the course of the 20th century.